So, Brandon, you want to start with like an opening statement or something?
An opening statement,
Or
yeah.
something?
I'll basically just say live what I said to two of you through text. So the first two acts, I was very much like, I was enjoying them a lot. And my big thing was that like I didn't have like a big picture view of what the overall season was, but I was enjoying the individual elements, that I was watching. And now that I have the full picture, I am in the camp of like, okay, well, I still enjoy a lot of the individual elements, but they really don't work together. And what I think is wrong is that I feel like they didn't spend enough time really nailing down their story structure, because like I said, all the individual elements are great and they're cool and they're fun and they're emotional, except that a lot of the emotion is not as strong as it could be because the structure is not right. And so some of the wow, I can talk. Setups and payoffs are not lining up the way they should. And so that's basically my critique, is that it needed more time in that stage creatively of like really nailing down the story. And my big takeaway from that, I'll just say one more thing in my opening statement. Just give me for 10 more seconds. Like for me, like that's something that I've kind of always, as a creator, not always, but something that I've come to kind of accidentally. I'm in that place where usually whenever I work on a story, it sits for several years, like I'm thinking about the story before I get the chance to write it. And that's only because I have so many stories. So it just takes a while to get around to it. But it really reinforced for me the feeling of, oh, I should keep doing that. Like that's a really valuable to spend time getting the story down before you execute it. So.
Excellent. Yeah. For me, I did not like Act One. I could tell almost immediately that there was some storytelling mistakes being made, some flaws, and but I really loved Arcane season 1. In fact, it's some of my favorite television viewing of all time. You could hop into any episode at any point and get sucked in immediately. It's the story's just that good. The characters are just that compelling. It's got everything you could possibly want. The animation is at the highest levels possible. Probably some of the best animation I've seen. And so the bar is high. The bar is high. So when I started season 2 and I did not, the animation was there. Let me say that from an artistic standpoint, season 2 has lost nothing.
The execution's great.
The animation is outstanding. Some of the cinematics are incredible. Some of the stylization they did were just excellent. But I noticed that the writing was different. There was something different about the writing in Act 1, and I was not pleased. Act 2, I felt recovered a little bit. There was things that I liked, specifically in episodes 5 and 6. So I thought Act 2 seemed to be trending in the right direction. And so I was eager to see if Act 3 was going to blow it off, blow the lid off and recover in full. Unfortunately, I feel like Act 3, there was a complete story collapse. I felt like the problems inherent in Acts 1 and 2 were not reversed, but exasperated, and I felt like it was a story collapse. That said, as frustrated as I am with season 2, this show can recover. Stranger Things recovered from a bad season and all this other stuff. I think as time goes by, this will be identified as a bad season. I believe that. I've had similar vibes here with The Last Jedi, with Game of Thrones season 8, with some other things that where there was a social desire for the franchise to succeed so much that if you're the one saying, I think this is flawed, it's like you're the party pooper. No one wants to hear about that. No one wants to hear negativity about our beloved franchise. Get out of here. So I've got
characters I love.
Yes. So I've experienced this before. I've gone through this before, and I think that will happen again here. But that's what we're here to talk about.
Okay, so on a high level, maybe I'm not quite, maybe I'm a bit lower level than that. Because I said I went through and I was giving ChatGPT a bunch of my notes and asked it to organize for it as I was ending the show. But as I've been thinking about it more, I'm like, well, okay, I think that the show had an unwillingness to let some characters to either see the terrible things that they've done or experience the consequences of those actions throughout that, which is not what I was expecting. I felt like that the season 2 became much more action oriented than the character kind of orientation that we were expecting. I was very disappointed that the Piltover Zahn issue was resolved. So was well, almost kind of papered
Resolved?
over. I mean, I kind of felt like, whereas that was a core part of season 1. And as a result, in general,
Bless
I thought
you.
several things were
Sorry, I almost fell out of my chair from that sneeze.
were resolved in what I kind of felt were some of the easiest ways possible. That like, okay, we've got to deal with something, and so how can we resolve it? Well, maybe we don't really want to deal with it, and there might be reasons that they don't want to deal with it because, like, if you're talking about seeing Kate as a dictator, or dealing with Jinx doing some terrible things, or even Vi doing some terrible things when she's an enforcer. I can kind of hear now Cameron in the back of my mind going, okay, but you got to have these people like these characters. And if this is part of a franchise, that maybe maybe that's part of the reason that we can't actually go to the places that I feel like I might have gone if, especially now. One of the things is like you can't that I want to make sure when I'm writing in the next thing that I'm really opening up and I'm going where I want to go. So maybe that was something that was held back, by the Doug asked me what I was thinking about it as I was watching season 3 or act 3, and I thought that I had just watched season 7 or episode 7, and the reaction to that I've noticed online is very different to the rest of them. Because I said, well, I told Doug, well, I was enjoying it, because actually when I started into act 3, I was like, do I just not understand how to watch a story anymore? Let me just try to just watch this and see what's going. And a lot of people positively responded to 7, which is by the way, there's spoilers all over here. In case you
don't
spoiler alert.
There's spoilers all over. And I think that's because it was the kind of storytelling that was more like season 1. Now, unfortunately, to me, it was in an alternate universe, which I don't typically care for in time travel. We talked about some stories where that works, like Terminator and Star Trek 4 and things like that. But that's just me. But I feel like, I think people are responding to that so positively because it's a return to the kinds of things we cared about a lot in season 1. But then by the time I was done with it, I was like, I had no idea that this was going to end in like a Marvel-style battle with org-like zombies.
Yeah, we're introduced in like
zombies.
season or episode 7.
Yeah. And so I mean I just watched it. I just watched all of act 3, and the weird part, and just watched it through, and the weird part was that I just kind of felt nothing at the end. I didn't. I mean, there were some great moments. Like I do like that Kate and Vi got together. I mean, a lot of people were cheering at that point. It wasn't completely emotional, but by the time I got to, this is a big battle and whatever, I was thinking it was going to end in a different way. So, or it didn't go. It was in the direction that I didn't know it was going. And actually, I wonder, Brianna, when you and I have talked a lot about if we have multiple threads, trying to end them at the same time in a story. That like, we got this and this and. So if you end one and then, we got to go on further to end the other one, that if you can make those ends happen together, that it's stronger. And I think that was a problem here.
That's very insightful. Yeah, that's a very distinct storytelling skill that's like a really difficult to pull off. But when you have so many different, but it's really necessary to make a climax work.
Yeah. So I guess it hadn't occurred to me. Or I guess my thinking was that the resolution of Vi and Jinx, whatever it was going to be, was going to reflect the resolution between Zahn and Piltover, and like hit at the same time, the conclusion, whatever. And it doesn't do that. We resolve things and go on so that like Doug and I were talking, like after you had gone, Brianna, we were like, man, you know what? We talked about all of Act 2 for like 2.5 hours and didn't even talk about Victor or Jace. I mean, and then I felt like I feel like we could talk for 2.5 hours about this one and not mention Jace, not mention Jinx or Vi, because there was. So I don't know. That's my high level kind of analysis.
Well, I'll just add too. I became curious about the writing. Was there anything different about the writers? or the writing room between seasons 1 and 2. And so I mapped out the writers of both seasons. And one thing that was interesting is that a lot of the writers are the same. Okay, so Nick Luddington, Alex Yee, Christian Link, these are a lot of the same. Amanda Overton, a lot of the same writers came back from season 1 to season 2. What was interesting and different about season 1, when they introduced the writers in the opening sequence, it said written by, Amanda Overton. Right underneath it in season 1, story by. It added that. So it was written by the writer. And then there was an overall story group, which was Christian Link, Alex Lee. I forgot one of them. And a gentleman named Ash Brannon. That was the big one. Ash Brannon. And there was another one there. Anyway, Ash Brannon's the most experienced writer of that group. He wrote Toy Story 2.
Oh, wow.
So this guy he worked with Disney Pixar in their heydays in the 90s and early 2000s. This guy knows his stuff. This guy's a slugger. He's a home run hitter. So now that I know that this guy was also involved in Arcane season 1, I could say that Ash Brannon wrote my favorite Toy Story and one of my favorite all-time television shows of all time. Ash Brannon was not part of season 2. He was one of the people that was not invited back. For whatever reason, I haven't done enough. Didn't have enough time to do the research to figure out what happened, or was it just an administrative decision? Was there a personality clash? I don't know. But it seems like his steady hand was missing in the guidance of this story. And it's possible, and this is just speculation, obviously, but Brianna, that maybe an experienced, heavy-hitting storyteller with experience could have come in there and kind of ironed out some of the wrinkles you're talking about, maybe organized the story in a way that would have been coherent and more satisfying, or said something like, I noticed you put in zombie female, like white droids in here. Can we take those out? Why don't we take those out and focus on character? Like just something like that. It's amazing what happens in those writers' rooms when you have someone guiding stories like that. So I just want to throw that out there. And then the last thing I'll say, and then I'll shut up for a pretty good long while, is I want Brianna's gonna lay out 3 major topics, and then at some point after that, I have put together something a little special for tonight's discussion. It's something that's been on my mind for at least a decade, and I finally started organizing these thoughts, and I'm calling them destabilizing story elements. These are things that when you introduce them into the story, they will destabilize your story. That doesn't mean they're going to ruin your story, because every single one of these elements has been used successfully, and in some cases, incredibly successfully, to tell some great stories. But there's a trick to it. So I'm going to share how many destabilizing story elements Arcane Season 2 employed, which is staggering, and also that they did not do anything to offset these destabilization things. And that's why you end up getting almost incoherent. When you string them together, it becomes incoherent. So I'll share that with you guys. It should be a fun discussion.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it should be kind of fun, especially with other experienced writers here in the panel.